Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for March 9th, 2018. On today's episode, we will be talking about a bunch of news, and in the water cooler, we'll be talking to Jacob, who went to Westworld. Joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film weekend editor, Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
Senior writer, Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And writer, Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
So, guys, yesterday on the podcast, I mentioned that I was kind of thinking that my opening spiel, teasing all the news items we were going to be talking about on today's episode, was kind of a waste of time. And boy, did you guys email us at peter@slashfilm.com. I got dozens of emails, and the consensus seems to be that either people didn't care or that people didn't want it. A lot of people saying that they hit the 15-second skip button a couple times when it comes up. So I think we're just gonna get rid of it and just put it in. We'll have the items in the show notes and have it in our titles, unless we get a huge backlash of people saying they wanted it. I think we're getting rid of the big opening, telling you what we talked about. I mean, when you tune in to the news every night, do they tease all the stories they're going to be talking about on the news?
No.
I don't think so. Not all of them, just before commercial breaks and stuff. But.
Yeah. And I mean, so, maybe we might tease like the big story or something, but I think we're going to, say goodbye to the long list of news stories. You can see that on the show notes and on the site. But first off, before we get into the news, and joining us for the water cooler is our special guest, Slash Film managing editor, Jacob Hall.
Hey, I'm a special guest.
Yes, Jacob is in the deep end of South by Southwest, the festival that happens every year in Austin, Texas. But we have you on the phone today. You're not in front of your mic as usual, because we hear you got to go to Westworld.
Yes, this was a very cool thing. Every year, HBO brings some kind of exhibit to South by Southwest to promote whatever their big show is. And usually it's been Game of Thrones. But there's no Game of Thrones returning this year, so they went all in on Westworld. And they went all in a huge way. They essentially created an entire Westworld experience 30 minutes outside of Austin where they shuttle you in. Well, first you meet at a neighborhood bar in Austin downtown. And then you go through security. Everybody's dressed in white like they are on the show. They have cocktails. It's very, very fancy. And you get assigned either a white or a black hat, cowboy hat. And then you get on the bus and you drive out to Westworld. And for fans of the show, you recognize everything immediately. You enter this really spiffy entrance where there's a robotic woman or an actress playing a robot with a big glass case of weaponry. And there are white and black hats on the wall. And there's this long white tunnel. And everybody's taking pictures and wandering through. And then you walk through this doorway at the end and you're on the train from Westworld, where the guests first arrive to go to this theme park inhabited by cowboy robots. And then you start meeting all the actors, and there are dozens of actors scattered throughout this entire experience, all of them pretending to be robots who are programmed to pretend to be cowboys. And according to the press note we were sent, there's a 444-page script that all the actors are following on a loop.
How long is the loop?
I presumed around 90 minutes. I couldn't quite pinpoint it exactly. But it's not like there's one story going on. There seem to be dozens of stories. Like when you first enter town, there are maybe 8 to 10 buildings, like a saloon, a general store, a photography shop, the sheriff's office, and all these other various areas. And there are just actors wandering around having conversations. And you can choose just stand by and listen to them talk. Or you can walk in and engage them. They'll improvise with you and talk to you and get you involved in conversations. Like the first thing I did when I entered town was a woman from New York City, a suffragette, a leader of a suffragette union, asked me if I would come to the meeting tomorrow to help get women the right to vote. But she said I could only come if 2 women vouched for me. And I kept on running into her throughout the evening, and she kept on trying to get me to convince other men, aka the other cowboys in town, that women should have the right to vote. And the actress remembered this and kept me involved in it. But there were so many other characters. They were like ne'er-do-wells and criminals and outlaws. And the sheriff who I went and chatted with, he warned me about other people in town, saying, "Don't go toward these people. They're rotten and they're up to no good." So naturally, I tried to go and find them, and I found their storylines. And there'll be incidents like you'll see a fight break out and somebody gets beaten up, and then the guy's friends show up and try to find out who did it. And if you decide to follow one of the friends, you keep on following that storyline. And you can choose to be as passive as you want, just kind of sit down with a drink in hand and watch it all happen around you. Or you can be really active and actively pursue the storyline, try to figure out what's going on, and replay the loop several times to find every character, every bit of dialogue, every single incident happening in the story. And I was there for a few hours. I didn't see everything. There were some characters I kept hearing talked about who I didn't get a chance to meet. But it was such a cool, immersive thing. And we're actually going to have an article running on the site soon where I took a lot of photos. I'm doing a larger report on it because I didn't want to just do a, hey, this was a cool article. I want to write a article about how this feels very much what we can expect from like Star Wars Land opening in Disney theme parks, where everybody's in character and everybody's taking it very seriously, and you're asked to engage in storylines. And even though it's just a South by Southwest pop-up exhibit, it was incredibly impressive, and it feels like the next step in this kind of entertainment. And it felt like I was playing a video game. It felt like I was at a theme park. It felt like I was engaging with a different type of narrative storytelling. I was really thrilled by it. And, of course, there were Westworld Easter eggs. Like, at one point, a samurai started wandering around as if he was malfunctioning, which, as if you've seen the show, you know there's more than one park. There's a Shogun World located next door. So it was very odd and very fun. And there's a weird cave in the very back of the exhibit. Or if you find a hidden button and push it, a wall opens up to a secret passageway, or a Westworld employee is building a Westworld robot, like sculpting it and checking a data pad. And it was just full of little details and things to discover. And at the very end of it all, it led to this massive culmination where all the plot threads came together, and there was a massive malfunction of robots, and Westworld security had to come in. And then the Westworld employee yelled out
people in hazmat suits, like the show?
Yeah, they all came on the white suits, because a robot kept on trying to injure another guest, an actor pretending to be one of the guests. And so all the security had to come in, like grab him and hold and like wipe his memory. And another employee had to shout out a code word, which caused all the other robots to like go blank and walk back to their positions, and the storyline started over again. And
that is so cool.
It is very cool, and it helped that there were free drinks. And some people engaged it in like more casual ways, like they just wanted to have drinks, eat the brisket that was around, and to sort of observe and take it in. Other people were like, I was trying to play in character. I would split off, and I would have conversations with the robot cowboys, as if I was a guest trying to play a video game and trying to solve it. Like I wouldn't like trick them or try to be cooler than them. I would have human conversations and try to get surprising answers, information from the actors. And I found it very rewarding, but I feel like you could enjoy it both ways.
Yeah, you sent us a photo. There was just like people playing poker in the saloon.
Yeah, it was fun because when I first walked in the saloon, there were 3 actors at the poker table all playing poker, but there were empty seats, kept inviting people to come join them. So throughout the night, there were these actors in character as cowboys playing poker with guests, like with visitors, actual humans. And the fun part was I missed it, but apparently at one point a bar fight broke out with one of the actors at the table. So it's literally people are playing poker, and the actor gets into a fight and has to rejoin the game after getting this big fight. And like there are just really awkward moments. Like one of the saloon prostitutes approached me. I didn't know how to handle myself because I'm awkward at the best of times. But it was a really cool thing, and it's really, really limited. It's only running for a few days at South by, and the passes are hard to come by. But if you're doing South by this weekend, and if you can find a way to get into it, man, I recommend it. And I hope HBO maybe takes it on tour, maybe tries it out at Comic-Con or something. I don't know. I mean, the space is here for it in Austin to have like the land to do it. But it was a very cool thing, and I think, Peter, as a theme park fan, this blow your mind.
When you were telling us about this in the Slash Film Slack, I was like, this is everything I want Star Wars Land to be. I feel like I would get, if Star Wars Land was this, I would live there for like days, just trying to see every possible storyline, every possible character, follow their stories around. I've always been intrigued by, oh my God, I forget, what's that play in New York where it takes place in an apartment building and you can follow... I think
it's called Sleep No More.
Sleep No More. Yes. I've never seen it, but I've always been obsessed with that idea. And to have that on a grand theme park level, it just sounds amazing. Ben, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm super jealous. This sounds really, really awesome. Even as somebody who is often frustrated with the storytelling in the first season of Westworld, there's something undeniably awesome about being able to step into that world yourself. And yeah, I think, Jacob, your comparison to Star Wars Land and, I feel like this is just the beginning. And that sounds like you had a really great experience just with like the appetizer of what this kind of thing could eventually become one day. So yeah, I'm very excited to read more about your experience there.
It makes me jealous that I'll never be able to experience this. Like, you know, things are being turned into theme park lands like Avatar, but I don't see Westworld ever being turned into a theme park land. That just seems like a bad omen for that park. But that would be so cool if someone, obviously, Disney wouldn't do that, but maybe, Universal or one of those Warner Brothers theme parks. That would be so cool to have that kind of immersive experience in a theme park in Westworld. But Jacob, what are you excited to see at South by before we leave you?
I'm actually, this is a cheat answer, but I'm actually most excited to see a movie we already viewed on the site called Hereditary, a horror movie that's playing on Sunday night. But there's a lot of cool stuff. I'm looking forward to the new movie from, help me out here, the director of The Foot Fist Way and Observe and Report, whose name is blanking on me right now.
Oh, Jody Hill?
Yeah, Jody Hill has his new movie playing at the festival, and he hasn't made a feature since Observe and Report in 2009. So that's what I'm most excited to see. There's also Isle of Dogs, A Quiet Place, Blind Spotting. It's going to be a really good year, and it's going to be me, Meredith Borders, and Matt Donato all running. So you can look forward for our coverage from now through next Saturday.
Okay, I'm sure people listening to this will be watching our coverage on slashfilm.com. Thanks for joining us, Jacob.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Okay, there's one thing I wanted to bring up in the water cooler. It was this quote yesterday. I was listening to this magic podcast for magicians, and this magician named Jared Koff, he's one of the greatest magicians in the world. People don't know of him. He helped create the practical effects for a ghost story, and he kind of gave this quote that I've been thinking about for the last 24 hours, and I think it's probably something that probably is more geared towards a magician than movie audiences, and I know I'm kind of pushing this by bringing my other passion into the pop culture podcast, but bear with me for a second here. The quote was, "All great artists are magicians, but not all magicians are great artists. Therefore, not all magicians are magicians." And I've been thinking about that because that's so profound to me. I'm seeing magic every week at the Magic Castle, and I'm getting more serious about my magic and trying to build a routine and come up with I want to make something that is not just a series of tricks, but is more of a story, and feels like art, something that will move you, and something that will make you is thoughtful and make you think. The kind of stuff that magicians like Derek Delgadio are doing. So I wanted to bring up to you guys, because I was thinking about this, why is it that people don't really consider magic an art? And the only thing I could kind of come to the conclusion is one of two things, and that is, number one, a lot of old magic is kind of hokey, sponge balls, and they dress weird, and it's just I don't know, it just feels kind of goofy. It's like a magician for child parties kind of thing. No one considers the clown's a child party artist, but I'm sure you do when you go to Cirque shows. And the other thing, the conclusion I came to is that magicians are secretive, and they don't let people that aren't magicians in on the process of how magic is created and how it's performed, and all that goes into it. If we were watching movies and we didn't have these behind the scenes documentaries and all the art that goes into it, and these interviews with these actors and directors and writers, and would we have less of an opinion of movies as an art? So I'm wondering, is it I wondered what you guys thought. Do you think part of the reason why the general public doesn't think magic is an art is that we don't kind of get to see that creation process, and we don't people aren't kind of let into the world of how much work and details and misdirection and that stuff goes into it? Ben, do you have any thoughts?
Man, that's a big question, Peter. You posted in our Slash Film Slack earlier today Tom Cruise's Oscars opening monologue that he delivered right after September 11th, and he mentioned that
which was written by Cameron Crowe. I had no idea until I found that on Reddit today.
Yeah, so that was really cool, and I watched that and I thought it was really great. And he talks about how somebody asked Billy Wilder, what makes movies special, essentially, and his answer was a little bit of magic. So I feel like there's some connection there, that amid all of these things that you're talking about. I don't know. Do you guys have any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people definitely don't think about magic being an art, just because it's always been kind of just a sideshow, if you will, for lack of a better term. And a lot of people don't necessarily connect art with those kinds of things. But, tying that into the idea of movies being magic too, I mean, movies essentially, by definition, are a trick, because the only reason we're seeing images move is because the frames are moving at the speed in which that we perceive motion. So movies in themselves are a trick of tricking our eyes into thinking that we're watching things move when really we're watching a bunch of stills being moved in front of us. And on top of that, there's plenty of other tricks that go into it too, whether it's visual effects or, putting sounds where there aren't any sound. So, I mean, every facet of movie making is definitely a trick, and there's absolutely an art to it, because, you have to have somebody who pays close attention and meticulously crafts these things so that they actually form some semblance of a story and trick us into believing that we're watching something unfold in another world. I think that's a really fascinating observation.
And not just the technology, which, is a great observation from you, but even, as a storytelling device, everything that we're watching on that screen is a lie. But we are getting emotionally invested in this lie. I remember, when I was in high school, I was big into professional wrestling, WWE. And, so many times when I tell people, I was a fan, which I'm not any longer, but, back then I was, during the Attitude Era. I would tell people and they'd be like, that's fake, right? And that used to bother me because, I'd respond do you watch The Simpsons? And they'd be like, yeah. That's fake, right? Should that matter any? If it's entertainment, it's entertainment. And it just seems, I don't know. I also think maybe it's that a lot of magicians, pretend to be, have powers. That, it's kind of maybe a scam. Chris, do you have any thoughts on this? I'm interested in your point of view.
I don't know. Maybe I'm an outlier in that I actually have always sort of considered magic an art. I mean, I'm not as well versed in magic as you are, obviously, but I've never thought of it as anything less than an art form in some way. I mean, it's a piece of entertainment, but that's what, most entertainment is art in some ways. I mean, even the trashiest form of entertainment can still be considered art if it's, if it has that goal. So I've never really separated it like that, but it's interesting that some people do.
Yeah. Anyways, something to think about. If you have any thing to contribute to this conversation, you can always send it to me in the mailbag at peter@slashfilm.com. But let's get into the news. We have a lot of it. We're definitely going over our minutes today. But let's start with the Bloodshot movie. We have some casting news. Chris, what do we know?
Yeah, so Vin Diesel, who's already part of several franchises already, is joining another franchise, and that is this film Bloodshot, which is adapted from the Valiant comics of the same name. Dave Wilson, who has worked with Tim Miller, the director of Deadpool, is making his directorial debut on the film. And it's being described as in the vein of 80s action movies like RoboCop. So, I mean, that alone makes it sound somewhat interesting. I'm not really familiar with the character as a comic. I've never read it, but I sort of like Vin Diesel, I guess, sometimes when he's in the right role. I liked the latest XXX movie, so maybe this will be fun. I don't know yet. I guess we'll see.
I'm not so sure about these Valiant comics. They're trying to build a whole universe of movies. We'll have to see. But let's move on to Call Me By Your Name. It was one of those films that was talked about quite a bit at awards time. Turns out it's getting a sequel. Ben, what do we know?
Yeah, we've known that Luca Guadagnino, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that. He's the Italian director of Call Me By Your Name, and he's been talking about making a sequel for months at this point. But we actually know now I guess on this past Sunday night on the Oscars red carpet. It seems like the Oscars were so long ago, guys, but just this past Sunday, he was talking with USA Today, and he confirmed that he's already working on the sequel. He said, "I'm already conceiving the story with Andre Aciman." I believe that's how you say that guy's name. He's the person who wrote the original novel on which Call Me By Your Name is based. And Guadagnino's quote is, "It's going to happen 5 or 6 years afterwards, so almost in 1990. It's going to be a new movie, a different tone. You'll see a lot of the East Coast of America. They're going to go around the world." When asked if the original cast of Armie Hammer and Timothée Chalamet will be coming back to play Oliver and Elio, he said, "Of course, how can we not?" So to me, that means that they're sort of writing the movie with them in mind, but it's still unclear whether or not those actors have like literally signed contracts saying that yes, they will reprise those roles. But yeah, that sort of changes the vibe of the movie a lot, because the first film obviously was set in the Italian countryside, and it was so it's a very sensual movie and very much dependent on its location. And now we're going to be going to the East Coast of America, so that's like a totally different aesthetic, and I guess I'm kind of interested in seeing what happens with these characters. I for me personally, I feel like they should probably leave this alone because the first movie ends so well. But if they are going to come back and do another one, I'm glad that the same director is going to be a part of it, and I hope that the same actors will be a part of it as well.
Chris, is this a sequel that you can get excited for?
Yes, I will see this. I loved Call Me By Your Name. I do agree with Ben that it probably doesn't need a sequel because the ending is really good as is, but if they're going to make one, I will definitely see it.
Okay, Entertainment Weekly's cover story is Infinity War. I think they have like 5 billion different covers with everybody, all the big names that are in the movie, from Iron Man to Thanos. So we've been learning a lot about that this week, and you can read all the coverage on slashfilm.com. But Brad, you've been covering a lot of this. What do we know about Black Panther 2?
We don't have any huge details on Black Panther 2, but we do have confirmation officially from Kevin Feige that it is absolutely happening. For a lot of you, that's probably just a foregone conclusion. You're probably facepalming yourself or being like, well, duh, no kidding, because the movie has made over $930 million at the box office globally already, so obviously Marvel's going to do a sequel for it. But this is the first time we're hearing it officially out of Kevin Feige's mouth that it's definitely going to happen. Previously, he had said that he hoped Ryan Coogler would come back to direct a sequel if they move forward with one, so it's pretty likely that Ryan Coogler will come back to direct. I can't imagine he would be adverse to continuing this path for Black Panther, especially since when he was doing the publicity rounds for the first one, there was already some discussion about, what he, where he would like to see Black Panther go as a character, and T'Challa as the king of Wakanda and whatnot. So, as far as
I was gonna say, after Guardians of the Galaxy blew up, he kind of like went on. It seems like Marvel's kind of planning this cosmic universe based on that because of the success of that. Wakanda was so popular, the movie was so popular. Are we going to see some spin-offs?
There's the possibility of it. There's no solid plans that Kevin Feige was willing to reveal or say, but he recognizes the fact that Shuri was a big deal for a lot of people, as was Okoye and Nakia. There has been confirmed that we'll see much more of Shuri in the forthcoming Marvel movies, whether that means Black Panther sequels, and obviously she's also in Infinity War. But I imagine she'll be around in whatever future Marvel movies they have planned, since we don't know what's coming down the road for what was considered quote-unquote Phase 4. It's hard to say, what her role will be. We've talked before about how it would be kind of interesting to see if she would become Ironheart, the new female Black Iron Man from the comics. There was a little bit of backlash from fans, though, I saw online about people that were kind of like, we don't need to combine characters or change the comics like that. We can have two, different characters like that, which is fair, but that doesn't mean it's not an interesting idea if that's what they were to do with Shuri, especially because there's no way she's going to become Black Panther soon, since his story literally just started with his first, movie in a franchise. So, as far as any possible spin-offs, it's a possibility, but Kevin Feige won't commit to it at this point. He, as he always says, they're only focused on finishing the movies that they have in production right now, even though they're always thinking ahead. So
yeah. I've been to Kevin Feige's office, and they have this board of their projects for many, many years to come. What is it, like 2 decades or something insane? Which was covered up when I was there. But
speaking of which, one thing that Kevin Feige would say that they would be doing much more of and continuing to do after the success of Black Panther especially is we're going to be seeing a lot more diversity and representation in the Marvel movies going forward. We don't necessarily know what that means, but Kevin Feige did specifically go out of his way that a lot of people, cultures that haven't been well represented on the big screen will be prominent in future Marvel movies, and it'll be interesting to see what he means by that. And also, in addition to in front of the camera, they also have people that they have already hired for future movies that they're not ready to announce yet that will be working behind the camera. I imagine both as writers and directors.
Also in the stories, we kind of get a tease of what's going to happen to our favorite Marvel characters after Infinity War. HT wrote this up for the site, but Ben, what do we know?
Yeah, so Feige also mentioned that some character stories are coming to a close while some are, quote, only just beginning. He says, I think they'll continue in surprisingly different and unexpected ways after these 2 Avengers films. And, for a lot of us, we automatically assume that means that a bunch of these characters are going to die. I think they've openly said that. I think Robert Downey Jr.'s quote was that heads will roll in these new movies in some way. But we're still not entirely sure who dies and when and in what way and all of that kind of stuff. And it's interesting because Feige also mentioned, he said in this interview, quote, death isn't necessarily what we're talking about. If I talk a lot because I'm a big-ass nerd about Star Trek The Next Generation, all good things, that to me is one of the best series finales ever. That wasn't about death. Picard went and played poker with the crew, something he should have done a long time ago, right? So that was his quote, and I have not seen The Next Generation, but as HT mentions in her piece here, All Good Things was the series finale, and it essentially followed Picard as he found himself jumping around to different points in time, and that's something that we've seen already in the Marvel Universe with Doctor Strange. We know that there are time jumping is a thing that the Marvel Universe is well versed in at this point. And we know that, like, for example, Captain Marvel is going to be taking place in the 90s. So there's a lot of flashback, flash forward opportunities in that cinematic universe. So it seems like there's going to be like a bittersweet quality to this. That's just me reading between the lines with what Feige is saying here. But as Brad mentioned,
so you don't think it's going to end with Tony Stark having shawarma and playing poker with all the entire team?
I mean, it doesn't sound like it, but I don't know. There may be some sort of something where like a character knows that things are not going to end up well, but the character has to go on living anyway. I don't know. That would be like a more literal interpretation of what he's talking about with that reference to that Next Generation episode. We'll have to see how that actually presents itself in Infinity War and Avengers 4.
Interesting. The Alamo Drafthouse previously announced that they're going to be creating a video store. They've now revealed more details on this video store that will offer free VHS rentals. Chris, what is going on here?
Yeah, so it's going to open in the Raleigh, North Carolina Drafthouse, and it's going to be called Video Vortex. And they're going to have thousands upon thousands of VHS titles, a lot of them rare, a lot of them out of print, a lot of things that haven't been transferred over to streaming or Blu-ray or DVD. And they're all going to be able to be rented for free. There's also going to be, alcohol and stuff that you'll pay for, and that's how they're going to make this, economically feasible. But if you're in the area and you want to rent free VHS tapes, this is the place to go. They'll also be renting out actual VCRs too, which I think you have to pay for the VCRs. So if you don't have one, so if you live in Raleigh and you want to watch some VHS tapes, this is where to go.
But why? What is the thought behind this? This is so baffling to me.
I mean, like I said, a lot of this stuff hasn't been transferred over to Blu-ray or streaming yet. I mean, there are thousands, maybe even millions of films that have yet to make that jump, some that will never make that jump. So there's, if they're part of this collection, I could see the appeal there where, there's no other way to see this film. Here's your chance. I mean, the quality will never be as great as Blu-ray or, the next quality is getting better every day on Blu-ray and HDTV and all that stuff. But if you have no other way of watching a movie than VHS, I could see taking advantage of that.
But I just don't understand, like, if they're not making any money on this, is it like that, like a community like that is still like not wanting to go to movie theaters? They're stuck at their home watching stuff at home, and this is a way to trick them to go to the movie theater?
I don't know. I mean, it's definitely a neat thing. It's definitely a niche thing too, where, it's not going to appeal to everyone, but if you're a hardcore film fan, I don't know a lot about Raleigh, North Carolina. I don't know what the film community is there, but if they're they're super hardcore cinephiles there who are into this, they would definitely take advantage of it.
For sure. And we'll get back to you later with another crazy idea. But first, let's get to Brad, who's going to tell us about the Dune movie adaptation coming from Denis Villeneuve. It turns out it's going to be at least 2 movies.
Yeah, the idea is that it'll probably take them 2 years to make, and they're hoping to make 2 movies, possibly more, if Denis has, I guess, his way. That's not entirely surprising. The book in itself is quite a hefty read. Depending on which version you get, it's right around 900 pages or so, and it's not easy to cram into a single movie. So expanding it to a couple makes sense. Whether or not audiences are on board for that kind of sci-fi epic kind of remains to be seen. We saw that they struggled a bit with Blade Runner 2049, which was some heavy, deep sci-fi. So it'll be, and Dune is kind of along those lines, if not a little bit weirder, to say the least. So we'll see if audiences are on board with that. It's a classic sci-fi novel for sure. It came out in 1965, so it's got legacy going for it. It's got fans for sure, but I'm not sure if those fans are enough to make it popular. And Dune's always kind of had a troubled history, if you will, of being adapted. Obviously, there was an attempt before by David Lynch. It was pretty poorly received in 1984. There was Jodorowsky tried to do his adaptation before that, and it never got off the ground. There's a whole documentary about it, which, even if you know nothing about Dune, is a fascinating insight into the making of a movie that never got off the ground.
Yeah, and, his last film, Blade Runner, did not do well at the box office. Chris, do you think this film has the potential to do well enough to, have, a trilogy of movies?
I'm going to say no. Not that I don't want it to, but I don't know. I feel like even though Dune does have that following, I don't think it's going to translate to the box office. But I hope it turns out well. I like his film, so I want it to turn out well, but I don't think it's going to be a hit. That's just me, though.
Okay, so on Kickstarter right now, there is a product that lets you swing through the air like Spider-Man. And when I posted this in the Slash Film Slack channel, Chris, I think the first thing that it came out of your mouth was, someone's going to die.
Yes.
So tell us about this, because this looks insane.
Yeah, so it's called Air Ropes, the Grappling Hook Experience. And a gentleman, an inventor from the UK, he has created, they're basically cannons you strap on your arms and they shoot ropes out, and you can swing from location to location, just like Spider-Man, in theory. So he has this Kickstarter up, and he's not trying to raise money to make more of the grappling hook arms. He's trying to raise money so he can buy a bunch more air mattresses so he can swing above them to test this out more. And he also wants to buy like a big structure that they have at concerts where they have lighting rigs on. He wants to have that so he can swing from that. Look, when I was watching this video, I kept waiting for him to reveal, it's a joke, but this is real. This is a real thing.
And we should mention in the video, like, it's not like this is a prototype that, he just like has on a computer screen. He has built these things, and you see him on like this like huge jungle gym kind of thing, like, but probably 3 stories high, him swinging from
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's only a few inches off the mats, so in theory, if you're doing it that way, maybe you're safe. But there's always I just imagine this going wrong and either like pulling your arm out of the socket, or someone gets a hold of this and they go to the top of like a skyscraper to try it off, and then they instantly die. I mean, I don't know how this is even feasible. I mean, he says he's very committed to safety, but he honestly, no offense to this gentleman, but he seems insane in the video. So maybe that's like part of his act. He's trying to sell it that way, but I don't know. You can see for yourself. Go check it out on /film. Watch the video and be amazed.
I only see two possible conclusions to this. Number one, somehow this is safe enough, and some theme parks with less safety regulations, buy this technology to allow people to feel what it's like to swing as Spider-Man through like a city set. Or we're all stupid, and this is actually a great technology that is going to be used by like the military or who knows, vigilantes,
an army of Spider-Men. Is that what you're saying, Peter?
Yes, that this could actually be something that could be useful in society, like police running around.
So if you guys have not watched this video yet, just the idea, after watching the video and then hearing Peter take this even remotely seriously, you'll understand why it's very funny, because the image of cops like uniformed swinging through the city with this particular tech is pretty damn hilarious.
Hey, when they announced the Segway, that looked stupid, and I probably was thinking it would be so stupid for a cop to be going around on a Segway.
But the Segway still looks stupid.
But now every day I see cops on Segways.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's a slight difference, but yeah, you could be right.
If cops get these grappling hooks, they're just going to start shooting them at people.
I'm just wondering if this guy succeeds at what he's trying to do, what is he going to do with this technology? Where is he going to sell it? Where is he, like... I mean, it can't just be for his own shits and giggles, right?
I think in the video he talks about like opening his own like theme park area where, in the UK somewhere where people can come travel from all over the world and come and, swing around like Spider-Man. So I don't know. Maybe he's just going to hold on to this idea for himself.
Okay. So you can go to /film.com, read the article, watch the video. You can find all the articles we talked about today on /film.com and linked in the show notes, including that Tom Cruise post 9/11 Academy Award monologue that was written by Cameron Crowe. So